Rock isn't dead. It's in flux.
Hi, everyone. I'm Britt with Rock and Flux, and I am joined today by Emilio and Patrick of the band Occults. Guys, thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So first things first, I always ask this question to everyone. Just kind of give me your history and how you got started in this band.
Yeah. Emilio and I were in a band in the 2000s called Nothing Still, and we were together for pretty much most of a decade. And, for everybody always asked like what genre we were kind of like dance pop. We were, the best way to describe it is sort of like the Killers before the Killers happened.
Okay.
And, my favorite story to tell is that we were doing a radio interview and the DJ was like, "Are there any songs you want us to play, in between segments?" And we were like, "Oh no, play whatever." And they were like, "Oh, have you heard this band, The Killers?" And they played their first single, Somebody Told Me. And we're like sitting in this radio station listening to it going like, fuck, they beat us to it. So that's where we got started. And then we all went our separate ways for a while. And it was really right before the pandemic happened that we started making a new album kind of around 2018. And we started writing, and it just wasn't really going the way we wanted it to, but it at least got everybody amped up and thinking about music again, and sort of like getting reintroduced to technology that we have now compared to what we had when we were teenagers. Mm-hmm. And so Emilio started writing these songs and sending demos my way, and we knew right away that it wasn't going to work with Nothing Still. So we started thinking about what would be something else. And now the two of us have been together for over 20 years. So we've only ever known ourselves to be that entity. Mm-hmm. And this was the first time we started thinking about like, well, what if there was something else? And that's sort of where the seed was planted. And, the other thing I'll say is that the demos that he was writing were music that we listened to when we were like, 15, 16, 17 years old, and like we weren't talented enough to make.
Like what? Like give me an example of some of that music, like what your influences were.
I mean, we were both, Emilio, you can jump into, we were, The Cure, Depeche Mode, Duran Duran were like, I'd say the holy trinity of the things that we really responded to. But we were also coming out of like nu metal.
Okay.
So both of us really loved like Korn and Deftones and Orgy. And so
like, just like me. Because I'm a nu metal kid too. So
so that's how we bonded. And I think it was sort of the nu metal itself, I think, had roots in 80s new wave and new romantics and all of this stuff. They were influenced by it. And so all of us who were teenagers in the late 90s were being influenced by, we were listening to the Deftones, but we didn't realize how much we were being influenced by the Smiths by listening to Deftones.
Right. And see, I don't consider the Deftones a nu metal band. And I know a lot of people do.
They kind of stand on their own. I'd agree with that because they do kind of stand on their own.
I think they definitely evolved out of it. But when I was introduced to Korn, I was introduced
they're
to
nu metal.
Yeah. I was introduced to, you need to listen to Korn and you need to listen to Deftones. Okay. And then after that was when like Limp Bizkit came along. But
or like Orgy. Orgy was a nu metal band that I feel like people forget about. But Blue Monday was, a cover and of that whole style. So yeah, I definitely can see what you're saying with that, with how they kind of intermixed.
So there were these bands that were all influenced by these things that we were not familiar with, but then became familiar with. Like when I was in high school, this girl that I had a crush on, she was we were friends because we loved like nu metal, and you know, we were going to concerts together, and she was the first one to hand me a copy of Violator by Depeche Mode.
Oh, wow.
And she said, you need to listen to this.
Wow.
And that's sort of like where it all started spinning out of control for me. So like then, you know, I'm in my, you know, late teens, and I'm listening to music that's like 20, 25 years old. And like, that's what I am obsessed with. And, and he was the same way. And so that that's how we made our connection, you know? And so we really wanted to make that type of music. And, you know, we're both from St. Louis, and St. Louis has a very, you know, we laugh, we call it like butt rock, but it's like, you know, it's a very sort of like distinct style of music. And like, we just didn't fit. You know, I think that we always joke, we were saying like, I wish we would have been from Chicago, because I felt like Chicago had a much better scene for what we wanted to do. Yeah. And we were heavily influenced by Kill Hannah, who was from Chicago.
Oh yeah, I used to listen to them too. Yep.
Yeah, and we got in on them very early before they got signed, and we were just like saying, that's the thing, that's what we want to be. And so all of those things were the things that we got started with, and the things that we wanted to do. Yeah. But then as the years went on, you know, we started evolving, and, you know, pop punk was becoming very popular. And so we had to sort of like fit in. If you're being put on a bill with other bands, you know, you have to sort of like fit in the pocket of what's going to drive the fans to the shows. And so we just started evolving, and that's what evolved into sort of that dance rock, dance pop, you know, craze that did come to fruition in the mid 2000s. Yeah. And we just never caught the wave on that. So
might not be the worst thing though, because I feel like for a while the Killers wanted to be anyone but themselves. So you know,
hey, yeah, it's like they were one of those, is like, as soon as they could get out, they got out, you know, and I think like, you know, Panic at the Disco was the same way. It was like, they made their dance pop album and then they got out. And, you know, so we were, that's what we wanted. We knew where we started, and, you know, doing very dark, you know, 80s influence type of music. So that's what, when Emilio started making these demos, that I heard them and I was like, that sounds like The Cure, and that sounds like the Smiths, and, you know, that sounds like Depeche Mode. And that's where we started. Okay. And we wanted to, we just went into this with absolutely zero expectations.
Isn't that the best way though? You know,
I think it has. It definitely, like, there are so many more cooler things that have happened for Occults than in the last 2.5 years than have happened in the 10 years of us playing in Nothing Still. Yeah. And the opportunities that we've been given just over the last 2 years, you know, is mind blowing. And I think it just all stems from the fact that, like, we weren't trying. We weren't, that, you know, I know so many amazing, talented bands that work their asses off and never get anywhere.
Right. Well, it's hard. It's definitely hard, you know?
And, you know, here we are, and we're like, we don't know if anybody's even going to listen to anything we put out.
Well, to be honest with you, like I had listened to you all, and you've been on my radar, and what made me reach out is I have a regular listener who's in Australia, and he sends me like requests of people to have on the show, and he specifically requested you all. So
oh, cool.
Awesome.
Isn't that cool? I mean, it's like, that's like kind of cool, because it's like all the way across the world, and, you know, he's listening to music. So
yeah, I look at it. It's kind of strange, you know, when I think about, you know, what we came from, and, you know, when we started in music, and having to, you know, stand outside of local shows, and you're handing out flyers, and, you know, it's become such a digital age, and the fact that, you know, we can reach out to people and from everywhere around the world, and those people be able to hear our music. That was just something that we never had when we were, you know, in our younger days. It's been really cool. I mean, just kind of making the music that, you know, I always wanted to do. And, you know, it's funny that Patrick mentioned about how kind of we started, because I know that for me, the influence of writing the way that we do now stemmed a lot from, I mean, when I was 16, dating a girl that loved The Cure. And I remember just being enthralled with the way that Robert Smith plays guitar and the sounds. I love his guitar sound, and it just kind of kept stemming from that. And the other bands that I would start listening to, I love the way Johnny Marr plays guitar and the way he kind of plays around his notes. And it's just that developed into things that I wanted to do, because it started getting to a point in our later years of the previous band that I didn't have a lot of creative direction, because for every one song I might write, the primary writer in the old band might write, 10 songs or write a full album, Right. So I needed an outlet to be able to get things going again for myself, and basically reintroduce myself to the love of music again, and creating just something from scratch and not going in with any kind of plan of what was going to happen to it or how it was going to go was just a really cool thing. And it was a lot of fun for me to start doing that. And just so happened that it started doing Occults.
Well, but I think when you talk about that, it's like, it's the honesty in it, right? Like that is what your heart, that's the type of music that your heart is in. And I think that there is a difference. And I think as a listener and an audience and in that capacity, you can always tell when things are sincere and when they're not, Yeah. And I think that always will transfer differently. We get into conversations and we can talk about this like as we go, but like AI, some people get worried it's going to replace art. I don't think it will. I think it'll end up being a tool for people to use, because I think that human element and that sincerity and that honesty is such an integral part of music. And I don't think that that's ever going to go away. So for people who have not listened to you all yet, if you had to tell them or pick a song of yours that you would say, you can start with this one, what do you think you would choose? What song?
Oh, man.
I guess it's gotta be Crystal Coffins.
Yeah, I would probably say the same. It just seems to be the one that kind of sticks with people, and that has kind of hooks people in. It's our number one on our Spotify for a reason. Okay. And totally by mistake that one, I mean, that's one that we kind of racked our brains over while we were writing, and turned out catching on by surprise.
It always happens that way. Every I feel like every band I talk to is like, this is the popular one. I don't know why, but let's give that a listen. Kiss between the flames of our funeral pyre. You're my obsession. My addiction. We'll dance on your glass coffin and bury me.
Yeah, we were, when we started writing the stuff, we had this idea that we were going to put out one single a month.
Okay.
And that lasted for about 5 months.
Well, I was actually going to ask about that, because I did notice, like, when I was checking out your discography, it was like very single space. And now it's kind of come that way again. So I was going to ask, like, do you have plans for releasing another EP? Like when you have enough singles that you've released, or are you just going to stick with releasing the singles?
Yeah. So yeah, our original intention was singles based. We just wanted to put out songs that and we always put the time and attention in each song, that we don't put out something that we don't like. We have to enjoy it. We have to love listening to it. And that was something that was born out of our previous experience, because we had made an album that we really only liked listening to half of it.
Well, see, and that's the thing. It's like that goes back to the honesty, right? So like when you enjoy it, I feel like it just comes out differently.
Yeah.
And I think it comes out in the music. So.
And that was my mandate, especially to I know Emilio's frustration is that like I have to love it and I have to want to listen to it over and over again, or we can't put it out.
Well, and if you think about it, when you're recording it and doing everything and then playing it, you better like that because you're going to be living with it for a while, you know?
Yeah. So so where we started with putting out singles, we decided to put it all into an EP, which we called Sacred Heart.
Yep.
And it is sort of like a mishmash of all the different songs, but in like one collection.
Yeah.
But that allowed us to sort of like restart, because what we learned in writing Sacred Heart was what we did like doing, you know, because our first single is called Little Joy, and it was something that was very post-punk based. You know,
I was going to say it's very rhythmic, and it's definitely more of that post-punk sound and feel than maybe some of your other music is.
Yeah. That's what we originally started wanting to do. And it was, you know, we were heavily influenced by like the band Editors, and
I was going to ask you maybe the Chameleons, because I heard a little of that in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was our goal. And then the next thing we did was we covered Physical by Dua Lipa. Yep. And that was something just for fun, because I had gone to Emilio and said, you know, I love Dua Lipa, you love Dua Lipa. I really think that this song could work as, you know, this kind of like post-punk shoegaze type of vibe.
Right.
And so that was just for fun. But then coming out of that, we wrote the song Ghost Town. And then that was where we started to kind of figure out what Occults was. So once we sort of figured out that vibe, we'd also written the song Sacred Heart, which was kind of our goth country thing.
But I was going to ask, because like there is a little bit of like country vibe in the style, like, and I was going to ask you all about that too.
Yeah, that was just another one where I think both of us love Orville Peck, and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could make Orville Peck but like a goth song? And that was the idea.
Yeah.
And we both, I mean, I hands down, you know, we've been making music together for over 20 years, and I think Sacred Heart is the best thing we've ever written. And I wish it caught fire the way that Crystal Coffins did, but
my favorite, my personal favorite is Hot Crucible.
Hey,
I don't know why, but that's my personal favorite.
How many times did you listen to it this morning? I saw on Instagram.
Yes, several times.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
The country thing is kind of interesting, just because of the fact that, you know, I know Patrick mentioned like Orville Peck, country, especially like outlaw country, has always kind of been in the back of my head, where like I like listening to it on some of my like off days.
Yeah.
And more recently, I've also been listening to a lot of like Ritual Howls. And they have that heavy kind of country.
They do.
But I've always really loved that, like that old Western guitar tone. And so being able to like incorporate those types of things into what you wouldn't expect is just a lot of fun to me. Because I think that, you know, and what we make is just expressions of what we've, you know, is kind of just sitting in our heads. And it's like, oh, well, what if we try, you know, this instrument in there, or playing this style in it? And I think that makes it a lot more fun and creative for us. And it kind of helps us branch out a little bit further than just, you know, being stuck in that one section of the genre.
Right. Well, and who wants to be, you know what I mean? And I do think, like we were talking earlier, like there is this community that's kind of formed around like the whole post-punk goth, like synth world. But I think the great thing about that is that everyone who tends to like this type of music likes a lot of different music. And I feel like it gives the bands and the artists that are involved in that the ability to do different things and not necessarily just do the same expected thing all the time.
Yeah.
Which is nice, you know? So I also noticed you did a cover of Black Celebration by Depeche Mode. What made you choose that particular Depeche Mode song?
Anxiety.
That was one. That's one that I've always loved, and I don't think it's a lot of attention. It's always a song that I've gravitated towards, and it's just not, even as we were doing research in preparation for doing the cover of it, like you just don't see a lot of people talking about it. And
no, you don't. I like that Depeche Mode song. It's actually one of my favorites, but I was just curious because you're right. It's not like one of the most talked about that they have.
For me, it was like the orchestration of it, the instrumentation, the structure of the song, all of it is very, off kilter, I guess you could say. And I really, I just felt like, we'd done the Dua Lipa cover, and I was, we should do something within the genre or something, but not to, it's like there's 10,000 covers of Personal Jesus. We don't need another one.
No.
But, we could do this, and I think that we could do it well. And our angle on it, like with Physical, we wanted to take a pop song and make it shoegaze. And so with Black Celebration, we wanted to make it a little bit more of that, like what we had done on Little Joy, and make it a little bit more like, rhythmic and pop punk, or not pop, post punk, and that was sort of the mindset that we had on that, and that has also been one that's gotten us a lot of attention, and I love it. Would love to play it live someday, but
well, and I noticed like a lot of your music, the instrumentation is a big part of the hook, especially the guitar parts of it. Is that intentional when you all are writing?
When going back to, my influences for guitar, when you look at people like Robert Smith or, Johnny Marr, is that it always is part of it.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's what kind of makes the music a little bit more interesting, where if you have a singer that maybe is singing just monotone throughout their song, but the instrumentation carries that, I love that, because I enjoy using the guitar as just an extension of my voice.
Right.
Of what I can't sing live, then I'll play on guitar.
Right.
And I noticed that about some of the other bands, in our genre. Big fan of like Twin Tribes, do a lot of that, where they kind of have these hooks that are running through it.
Yeah.
And because it shouldn't just be limited to, a vocal hook, but, supporting music. I think that everything kind of deserves its own hook to have its place.
Yeah. And it makes it more interesting to listen to. Like, it's always interesting to me when I talk to other people who, they can listen to the same song, but they don't necessarily hear what I hear in it. Like, one of my all-time favorite songs, I don't know why, but I've loved it since I was a kid, is Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. There is cowbell in that song, okay? And it's like my favorite part of the song. It's a da-da-da-da-da-da. You know what I mean? Like, it's that cowbell. And I told my friend, I'm like, I love that cowbell in that song. She's like, there's cowbell in that song? I'm like, yeah, there's cowbell.
All right. Two things. One, when we were in Nothing Still, we actually had a t-shirt that says, Emilio says relax. So there's our Frankie connection. Two, no, I'm the same way, because I'm heavily, heavily influenced by Prince.
Okay.
And I obsess over the nuances of all the bells and whistles and nooks and crannies that are going on in the background.
Right.
And we very similar, we do the same thing here. We are going over so many multiple layers of things, and I'm actually, we're working on a song right now, and there's notes that I owe Emilio that are like, hey, what if we do this and we add these little ting ting tings and shit in there, and so we definitely bring a lot of that to the table, and I think that's and it goes back to what you're saying about like just being true to ourselves. I think that as long as we're making it and it makes us happy, then that's what counts. And
but it's also those
hope
little
that it finds
things.
people.
But it's those little things, I think, that not all listeners will notice it, but I'll guarantee you if you took it out of the song wouldn't be the same. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I kind of like to do that too. I mean, when I'm in the, recording process of, when I'm starting to kind of framework some of the songs, I reflect back to like, you think about people like Martin Gore and how in Depeche Mode, the synth knowledge that man has is unmatched to anyone, in my opinion. And there's so many little things, that's what I thought was really fun about doing Black Celebration, was really getting to sit down and break apart the song and, hearing these little things of like, oh, that's the sound of them like hitting, steel or something like that. Or you see like some of the videos of them creating stuff, and it's just so neat. But it's those little nuanced things that kind of keep things interesting in the songs. And that's stuff that I listen for, when I'm listening to music. So I like to kind of, I don't know if you want to consider them Easter eggs, but, throw those little kind of bits randomly in the songs.
Right.
And
I think it's interesting. Go ahead,
we love our instrumentals, and so part of our singles, we always release an instrumental as well.
I noticed that too.
And I think when we originally started that, we did it because we wanted to give people the ability to, if they want to make a remix or if they want to play it at the, goth club. But
I think that's
cool. It's also just a big part of like, I mean, we have this issue where we talk about it all the time and we go, the fucking music is so good, I almost don't want to put lyrics to it. Yeah. So to go back to a question you had earlier, we are writing a full-length album right now that kind of came about only because people were asking and wanted us to put together something bigger. And so we are actually, in the process of, we're demoing out all these songs, but then we're trying to decide, like, we know we want to have an instrumental on the album, in a very sort of Cure-esque sort of way. And, we keep coming across these songs and going like, oh, I think this one might be the instrumental, but I also think that one could be really good with vocals. And so we keep trying to figure out which one might be the one, but I think we finally figured that out.
Nice. And I'm assuming you don't have like a date in mind yet of when people can expect new music.
No, right now we're looking at the first half of 2024. Okay. I think we're on track for that, but we are right now. We're going to have another single out before the end of the year, and then our other big thing we've got coming out is Sacred Heart. The EP is going to be released on cassette in the EU through Summer Darling Tapes, and so we're really excited about that. So that's going to happen very soon, coming up, and so we'll be promoting that as well as have a new single out.
What made you choose cassette? Because this topic comes up on this show a lot. The format of music and what the artists and bands prefer as far as that goes, and then like what fans prefer. So what made you choose a cassette tape? Just like the nostalgia aspect of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's partly out of necessity. Like I said, because we got started in quarantine.
Yeah.
Coming out of quarantine, there was this big wave for vinyl, and
yes, and it's still going too.
And it's still going, so. and the demand for it is very high. And so, initially, when we finished Sacred Heart, we looked at what was the prospects of getting it pressed on vinyl. Mm-hmm. And obviously, not only was it expensive, but there was also like a 13-month turnaround time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So we were like, "There's no point in doing this," and so we released Sacred Heart on CD just so that way if people wanted a physical copy, they could have it.
Yeah.
But we also focused on digital. And so we knew we wanted to do something on cassette. And last year we decided we wanted to do something fun. And so we created a Cassingle, like an old school 90s Cassingle for Hot Crucible. And that was the first one we released on cassette. And so with the Summer Darling tapes, it was just a really cool opportunity to offer something to our fan base that's overseas, who, we've run into issues where, they order CDs and we send them to them and then they get, held up at the border and they get sent back, and it's a whole thing. So like this at least it gives them the opportunity. We'll have the cassettes here in America, but then also they'll have the opportunity to buy them directly in Europe. And so that was just something that was very exciting to us. And,
with new mixes of Physical and Little Joy.
Yes. Cool. And it'll feature Crystal Coffins, because it'll be the first, actually technically not the first physical release of Crystal Coffins, but we included it as a bonus on the album because it was the first single we released after Sacred Heart. So we decided it would be a fun little, add on to the album.
Cool. Now, see, for those listening, they are sporting Crew Lies and French Police shirts. So we've had both of those bands on the show. And, I know like a lot of bands will do remixes of each other's music or like, add some remixes to new albums when they're putting them out. Do you all have any desire or thoughts about doing anything like that? Either having someone else remix some of your songs or remixing others?
Oddly enough, that's been a topic of our conversation quite a bit.
Okay.
We actually did just do a remix for Wingtips.
Oh, cool.
And that released this past week.
Nice.
On their remix album. When it comes to remixing our stuff, I'm always open for it. And that's something that we've been discussing, as I try to get out to shows and talk to some of these bands in person and try and get some of these some bands to sign on. We have actually had some discussion with Crew Lies whenever they were in town for potential stuff in the future.
Yeah.
Right now, I think it's more of just finishing the album. I'm always up for remixes. I come from an EDM world. I was a DJ for a long time and producer for a long time. So I'm totally used to making electronic music and playing with stuff, and I love the opportunity to do remixes. So yeah, we're always open for that.
Nice. So a question that I ask everyone who comes on this show, and I'm going to ask you both as well. So the whole idea of this is that rock isn't dead, and some people define rock music in different ways, but for me, it's really any music that I feel like rock is like an over-encompassing term. And there's that saying that rock is dead. So to me, it's not. And I even think that like the whole synth and new wave and that like the goth genres are a part of rock. It's just like a small niche of it. So what are your thoughts? Do you think that rock is dead?
Yeah, I don't at all. I mean, I think that the people who think that rock is dead aren't looking for enough music. And because if your only intention to find new music is to turn on the radio to find it,
right,
you're not going to find new music.
Right.
I mean, I take every day that I turn on my Spotify, I don't even listen to my own playlists anymore. I find a radio or, I like, French Police.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to see like what French Police radio has to offer.
Right.
Discover new music.
Well, their daily remixes that they're starting to do. For a while, I felt they were really like putting you in a box, but they're getting better with it. I feel. And so I listen to my daily mixes a lot that they make for me. And I'm like, okay, because it's a kind of a nice mix of different stuff. So I agree.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think rock has evolved. And I don't think it's dead by any means. I think that if you look at it from a strictly like, top 20 Billboard, what's popular, what's on the radio, like, sure, it seems that way.
Right.
But, not only is what's going on with our genre happening and there is, we just had, we just have Cruel World here in Los Angeles, and we've got another one coming up next month that, you know, and what I saw at Cruel World was this, you know, combination of here are bands that you love from the 80s, and then here are bands that are around right now that you should know about, like Urban Heat and Twin Tribes and Boy Harsher. And it's like I thought that was like the perfect example of getting people to realize like, hey, this thing that you love is alive and well, and you just have to like look for it because it's actually really good. But I also, I do think that like on like rock in general, you know, there's just an overall resurgence, I think, you know, with bands like Måneskin or, you know, or Greta Van Fleet, you know, they're those bands are kind of carrying the flag for that specific genre, and then there are a lot of metal bands that are doing their thing. And so I don't, by no means do I think it's ever dead. And I don't think it ever will be, because there's always going to be people that are doing it. And then at the same time, you know, I would go as far as to say that, you know, fucking Taylor Swift rocks. You know, I'm going to go see the Eras movie this weekend. I don't give a shit. Like,
oh, you're doing that too?
I'm doing it. Like,
I'm seeing it on Saturday.
You know, so, you know, I think that like it's going to evolve and it's going to be present in any form.
Yeah. I can't get behind Taylor Swift. I understand why people like her. I do. I understand it.
Okay. All right, and that's the end of the interview. Okay.
No, I will say, I am not a fan of Taylor Swift's music in the slightest. It's actually my daughter. My daughter's really into her, so I promised her I would take her to go see it.
Nice.
But
and I'm his daughter.
I'm gonna be the goth dad at the show. But it is it's funny because, you know, I have this conversation with my wife and with just anybody that we talk music with, and it's that there are so many artists that I am not going to be listening to their music. You will never hear them on my Spotify, but that doesn't mean I don't respect them as artists or respect them as people. And, you know, that's always been my take with any music. You know, I can find something I appreciate in any artist for the sake of their being an artist.
Right.
But
they're putting themselves out there, you know, that you're creating something and you're putting it out there. And that's why, like, with all of this, if I don't like something, I just don't talk about it. I'm not going to critique somebody else's work. I'm not a musician. You know, do I understand music? Can I play some instruments? Yes, but I don't consider myself a musician by any means. So who am I to judge the art that they're putting out? And so I just don't, if I have nothing nice to say, I just don't say it. And I agree. Like, and honestly, same way with things like that. Do I listen to it? No. But do I understand why people like it? Absolutely. I do.
Yeah. So. I'm the way you feel about Taylor Swift is the way that I feel about Machine Gun Kelly. So I'm right.
I feel that way about him too, though. So
fair then.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think that's the great thing about music is there's so much different kinds. There's something for everybody, right? So
absolutely.
So one thing I also wanted to ask as we're starting to wind down our conversations is like, so you talked about touring. Do you have any tour plans? And also, I'm always interested in, you know, music that has a lot of synth involved. How do you approach when you're performing your songs live? And there's only two of you. So like, how do you approach your live show?
So thankfully, you know, as we talked about earlier, you know, with technology being as good as it is now, you know, when we were in our previous band, we worked with a lot of synths and loops and stuff like that, that we ran through. I mean, I think we did a laptop at one point. We did ADAT tapes at one point, iPods. But I think now a lot of that, if we do plan to play shows, we've talked about this a lot, of actually getting a full band. Because when I write as a full band. You know, I write, typically our songs are going to have at least two guitars, maybe even three. There's always going to be bass on it, live bass.
Right.
We've actually have somebody that we're working with that does some of our bass tracks.
Nice.
And there's going to be a vocalist, there's going to be a drummer. And even having people that potentially could play synths. So we want to do a full band, perhaps not necessarily being a part of Occults, but we can hire people. People can play our parts. I don't write the most complicated things, but I think that a lot of the synth stuff, most everything can be put through tracks at this point, through the laptop. Same way that I watch, Crew Lies do the same thing, and a lot of our bands that we're into all are running some sort of sequencer laptop on stage, and it works really well. So embrace it.
Yes, agree. Well, thank you both for being here and talking with me today. It's been really nice to have you and a great conversation. So I appreciate it, and I hope you all enjoy the conversation as well. If people who want to hear your music, you can find you on all the streaming platforms, right? You are Occult Official on Instagram. You have Facebook, all the social media platforms. So check them out if you all haven't already, and give us a follow on Rock and Flux IG. And thank you all for listening. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.